What's up everyone, Cyrus here. So recently I've seen a bunch of videos where people snap the Smash roster in half, picking half the characters to get rid of, half to keep. Also saw one where someone increased all the franchises so they have 8 reps exactly. I thought that was a real cool idea as well. So I'm going to do something similar, where I take every franchise and I double the number of characters it has. So if it has 3, it goes to 6, and if it has 2, it goes to 4. Couple of ground rules I'm going to be using is I'm going to assume Smash Ultimate roster items, all that are what they currently are. And I can't pick anyone that's currently an assist trophy, so no Waluigi. When I get to Pokemon, no Pokemon that's a Pokeball is going to be able to come in. And there's going to be no Mii costume, so Geno is out. If there's an Echo, I have to replace it with another Echo. Probably of a new fighter that I'm adding, maybe of an old one if I have to. Let's just jump into the first franchise with Super Mario, which has 9 character spots and only one official Echo in Daisy. Dr. Mario does not count as an Echo, so we don't have to follow Echo rules for him. My first pick is Paper Mario. Mario has 2 forms in this game, Mario and then Dr. Mario, while Link has 3. Well, I think those are both a little bit much anyway. If we're gonna give someone 3, it should probably be the face on the game. Paper Mario also has a very unique moveset potential, being distinctly different than Mario with his paper form, origami potential, and there's been a Paper Mario game pretty much every console, so he'll fit in nicely. I think antagonists and villains are very underrepresented in Smash Bros. As a whole, and especially if I'm going to be doubling the franchises, I want to include a few more. So first is Boom Boom, first from Super Mario Bros. 3, and then recurring since then. Since SM3 is one of the most iconic games, they even put the whole game into an Animal Crossing game. I think he's a great choice to start it off. Keeping with antagonists, we've got Madame Brood from Odyssey. Odyssey being the most recent 3D Mario game and immensely popular. I think she's a very natural fit. Another heavyweight, and the Change Hump has a lot of potential for some cool moves going on. Spot 4 is our Echo spot. So, since he's not already an alternate costume for Bowser, we've got Dry Bowser, who has a really cool looking design and shouldn't be too hard to design for. Take Bowser, change his weight a little bit, and add a little bit more of that lava heavy flair to it. I assume heavier. I don't know if bone would be heavier than the full body. Either way, Dry Bowser makes for a really cool Echo Bowser. We've had 3 villains in a row, so let's get back to friendly characters with Professor Egad from the Luigi Mansion series. Cool inventor, old scientist type guy. He's got the vacuum that Luigi sometimes uses, but there's a lot of cool potential, and he's a fan favorite. Speaking of fan favorites, we've got the legendary Captain Toad from his own video game and some of the more recent Mario games like Odyssey. Welcome Captain Toad to Smash. And next is going to be a very deep cut, all the way back to Sunshine, this character that's appeared once. Piantissimo, I'm pretty sure I said that right. I think he's a really cool character to have in Smash, someone who really doesn't have a ton of star power, but would just be fun to pick and play. Back to characters that people know about, and back to antagonists, we've got Fawful from the Mario and Luigi series. Recurring antagonist, occasional main villain. He's just got a super cool design, super unique from the rest of the Mario franchise in his moveset potential. He's got a lot of stuff they could do with him, and it'd be nice to see him show up in another series that isn't just the Mario and Luigi ones. And rounding it out with one of the OG Mario Arcade characters, Pauline, who's been showing up a lot recently and just makes sense to put in as our last Mario rep. Editor, put in some monkey noises. Our next franchise is Donkey Kong, with only 3 reps, so this shouldn't take too long. Gotta start off with the obligatory antagonist, Lord Frederick from Tropical Freeze. Big guy with a big horn, what's not to love? Now going for a little bit of a deep cut for Donkey Kong, being Donkey Kong Jr., he had his own game a long time ago. He was an old Mario Kart racer, he was in old sports games, but he hasn't shown up a ton recently. I think he's a great callback to the older generation of Donkey Kong. It didn't matter if we got 1 or 100 slots, Funky Kong was always going to make it in for me. The man, the myth, the bandana wearing legend, back in Smash. Next up, one of the major franchises for Nintendo, Zelda, which unfortunately I can't pick my 2 favorite picks for since they're already assist trophies. You got no Midna, and we've got no Skull Kid. But there's still a lot of good options left. With an easy one, we've got Urbosa. From Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, she's iconic, she's awesome, she's a great fit for Smash as someone who's not another form of Link or Zelda. But we can do another Ganon rep, or, more specifically, a Ganon, Ganon's alter ego from Link to the Past, which makes for a great antagonist. It's nice to have another form of Ganondorf if we're going to have so many of the others, and it's just a cool design that could be a good move set without being super similar to the other Zelda reps. And now it's Lana time for someone that isn't another form of those main three. She's from Hyrule Warriors, among other things, and she's one I personally just really want to see. But if we're going to have so many different forms of different characters, let's get another form of the sword in here as well, or more specifically, Fi, the spirit of the Master Sword from Skyward Sword. The next one is very interesting. Impa, who has been in Zelda since the first game in various different incarnations. Personally, I'd be inclined to go with the original Zelda old lady form, where she wasn't even named in the game and only in the instruction manual. But I could go for the new forms either, as long as Impa does make it into the game. But for number 6, I'm going to skip over a lot of fan favorites and go for the antagonist of Spirit Tracks, which I think covers just a different genre, different era of the Zelda timeline. And it's another villain, cool design, more similar to Ganon than Ganondorf, but I think he fits in pretty cool. And now we move into Metroid, which is a little bit of a tough series to pick reps for, with Samus being the main focus and already having Ridley in the game. But there are some good picks. And if we're going to start somewhere, let's start at the beginning with Kraid, the antagonist of the first Metroid game, and a little bit on the bigger side, but they made Ridley work so they can make Kraid work. And this next spot is an Echo, taking Dark Samus' spot from the original lineup. So I've got Fleet Admiral Castor Dane from Metroid Prime 3. And I think he could work not as an echo of another Metroid character, but as an echo of Snake, leaning into that same sort of military sort of feel that Metal Gear has. And it would be nice to add someone friendly to Samus who isn't just Samus without a suit. And we'll follow that up with a Metroid Dread antagonist, Ravenbeak, who probably could have fit the Echo spot, but if we have Samus, Ravenbeak, and Dark Samus, that would be a bit much, and I wouldn't want to play that game. But Ravenbeak is different enough that I think they could have a lot of cool moveset moves, leaning more into the different style that he fights with. And rounding out Metroid, we've got a secondary antagonist group for Metroid Dread, Emmy, or the Emmys, however you say that when there's multiple of them. They're already spirits in Ultimate, but I think they'd be cool to have as actual playable characters. And our next franchise is just Yoshi, who is mostly known for Yoshi's Island, but also Yoshi's Crafting World, which is where I got our one and only rep from. The Blockafellas are unique to Yoshi's Crafting World, and there's a whole family of them, so there's a lot of alt skin potential. And it's a very cool, still Smash looking character, while having some cool, unique designs you could play around with it bouncing around, a little bit like a pogo stick. Moving on to Kirby, they actually have a lot of good villain rep already, with 2 of the 3 slots being antagonists. And I think I'm going to copy that same theme with 2 more antagonists and 1 friendly. My first pick is Marx, who is technically already in the game as a boss battle, but then so is Ganon and Giga Bowser, so I think it still works. And I think he would be a fun character to have, with a pretty cool moveset potential and a really nice design. Our next pick is technically an antagonist, at least in their first appearance, but they turn shopkeeper slash ally going forward with Magalore. I think they look cool. I think they'd be fun to have in Smash. And it's a nice cross between villain and ally. Which brings us to our last pick. Unfortunately, Chef Kawasaki is already an assist trophy, so I went with instead Eileen from Rainbow Curse. She's a friendly character, and she looks like she could have a lot of cool potential in the same sort of way Inkling does, though instead of using ink and going into the ground, it'd be more colorful and paint-based. Bringing us to Star Fox with 3 current reps, so 3 more to add, and unfortunately Crystal, my favorite choice, is already an assist trophy, so we'll have to get a little more creative. And here's Slippy, the mechanic inventor of Star Fox. You can't talk about adding a new Star Fox character without adding him. Next up, the sassy little lizard guy, who's part of Wolf's crew, Leon. I just like his design a little bit more than I do the other people for Wolf's group or for the last couple of Star Fox characters you could add. For reasons I will never understand, General Scales got off-screened in his game despite being built up as the final antagonist, so it'd be nice to bring him back and let him actually fight in Smash. I think he's got a lot of cool things he could do while still being part of that Star Fox franchise. And next up, we've got a big one. Pokemon with 8 reps, and a lot to avoid here with the Pokeball items. Let's just jump right into it. Launching right into it, a strong start is another grass starter which we could use on the lineup, Gen 3 representative, and for those of you who played the Explorers games, you already know who he is. It's Grovyle. There's a lot of iconic Pokemon, so I'm trying to pull from as many different things as I can. So, this one is Tyranitar. People know him from competitive back in the day, Gen 2, and he was in Pokemon Unite. So, between all those, I think he's a good number 2 spot for the new Pokemon 8. You can't talk about competitive, though, without bringing out Mega Rayquaza, an absolute nightmare on the field. And Rayquaza was originally in Brawl as well as a boss battle, so it's a good callback to there as well. How you unlocked one of the characters, actually. Next up, a little guy with a big hammer, Tinkaton from Gen 9. Not too much to say, except I really like this Pokemon. One of the only ones from this gen I really appreciate. This one might be a little more controversial, but I'm going to go with Unpheasant from Gen 5 here. Because starter birds are a staple of the series, and in my opinion, this is one of the more interesting ones from my favorite set of games, Black and White and then Black and White 2. Then from Gen 8 is Sirfetch'd, an evolution from a previous gen, but Sirfetch'd was introduced in Gen 8, and I think we just needed another sword fighter character in the game. I just don't think we have quite enough of them. But actually, with the shield and the leak and the Pokemon status, I think you could have a lot of interesting spin on it that makes it not just another punch and claw Pokemon, but also not a sword fighter. Blazing through them on slot 7 of 8, we've got Bidoof from Gen 4, the token of HM slaves, and a fan favorite Pokemon. I think he's a great way to round out the actual Pokemon as we move into Pokemon Rangers Ben and Summer from Pokemon Rangers Guardian Signs. I imagine they're alt skins of each other the same way Steve and Alex are. And there's a lot more Pokemon I could choose from, but I think having that many already is enough. Between the 7 we just added, the somewhere between 8 and 10, depending on how you count Pokemon Trainer, I think having some actual characters fits nicely, and I think the Rangers, who fight a little more on their own, make more sense than adding Cynthia, who would just use Pokemon. Moving away from Pokemon, we've got Earthbound, currently with 2 reps, both of them being protagonists of their game. We gotta round out the trilogy of protagonists with Ninten, even if I normally like to pull from something a little more niche than just shoving all the protagonists in there. It would feel weird not to round out the trilogy, and it would take a little bit of work to change him design-wise to make him not get confused with Ness, but I think they can do it. But who cares about Ninten? Because we've got Masked Man, an antagonist that really hits you right in the feels when you play Mother 3, which I have done legally and by no other means. Now, at this point, Captain Falcon is basically just a Smash Bros. Rep. There hasn't been an F-Zero game in forever, but we're going to go ahead and try and find another rep anyway. So we went and grabbed the series antagonist Black Shadow, who looks very similar other than he wears black with devil horns. Which brings us to Ice Climbers, and their whole of 7 characters, mostly animals, that exist in the game. Now, since I didn't want to just pick a condor or a polar bear, that doesn't feel very Ice Climbers, I went with the Topi, which actually only exists in the American version. In the Japanese release, it was just seals, but that was too violent for Americans. So, we put Topi in instead. And I think it's unique enough to fit as an Ice Climbers rep over a literal bird. And next up is Fire Emblem with 8 reps, which people already think is too many. So, trying to double it, there are only 2 echoes to work around, no matter how similar some of these others are, Lucina and Chrom. We're going to be trying to stay away from more sword fighters and dip into things that are a little more niche or have a lot of moveset potential that won't make them similar to the ones that already pretty much play the same. So on that note, our first pick is Celica from Gaiden and the Echoes Shadows of Valentia remake. She's a mage character, she's one of the two protagonists, the one that doesn't use a sword, and people have been asking for her for Smash as a Fire Emblem rep instead of one of the 5 sword fighters for a while now. Next up is an Echo Fighter spot, and I picked Reinhardt, who is technically a secondary antagonist, not even secondary, a minor antagonist for Thracia. However, he got extremely popular in Fire Emblem Heroes, consistently getting top 20 in the Legends popularity polls. And he is a Mage Knight, which means he's great to be a clone of Robin instead of another sword fighter. Following it up, we have Sombron, the primary antagonist of Fire Emblem Engage, who has just a lot more interesting moveset potential than picking a Lear as another sword fighting protagonist, even if they could technically also be a dragon. It's a lot cleaner to just pick Sombron here as the newest games rep. Next up, we've got another antagonist in Garneth from the Altea games. He's an antagonist in a lot of them, the originals and their remakes. He's in the Echo spot, so he could be an Echo of Sombron or of Celica, depending on how they want to make their movesets. Just over halfway done in our 5 spot, I chose to pick all 3 from the 3 houses slash 3 hopes, Claude, Edelgard, and Dimitri, in Pokemon Trainer style. I was trying to avoid that for most of these. It seems a little bit like cheating, but for these games in particular, it makes a lot of sense. And having a spear, an axe, and a bow character to rotate through will set it apart from all the other Fire Emblem reps. But we do need to put in at least one sword fighter. Everyone's got to be happy with the new Fire Emblem reps. So I went for Rowan slash Leanna from the Fire Emblem Warriors side games. And I imagine they're alt skins, not swapping between the two like Pyra/Mythra. Don't want to take that gimmick too much. Next up is one of my favorite protagonists from one of my favorite Fire Emblem games, Sigurd from Genealogy. And while he technically could also be a sword user, he is more often depicted now as using a lance and being cavalry. So I think that has a lot of good moveset potential that will put him apart from everyone else on the list. As much as I would have loved to take Lynn, she's already an assist trophy, so instead, we've got Hector, one of the other protagonists from the Binding and Blazing Blade games. He's an axe user, he's pretty popular, and all around, seems like he could just have a good moveset. Game & Watch has 1 rep and not very many original characters at all, which leaves us the only real choice. Stanley the Bugman from the Greenhouse Game & Watch game and also appeared in Donkey Kong 3. Next up, Kid Icarus, 3 reps, one of them being an Echo. First up, the original antagonist Medusa, who later becomes a support character. In our Echo spot, we've got Magnus, who is a sort of neutral, sometimes ally character, and could be a clone of Ganondorf, with the big old sword and big muscular frame. And finally, to get another villain rep, we've got Orgos, the Myths and Monsters antagonist, and he's big, but they made Ridley work, so he works. Next up is the WarioWare franchise, featuring Wario. Ashley and 9V tend to be the most popular, but since Ashley's already a trophy, we're taking 9V, who also has a pretty fun personality to put in the game. Next up with Metal Gear, we have way too many good options to choose from. I had to pick one, so I went with an antagonist who could debatably be considered the hero, who is a sick design, and is one of my favorites, Ocelot. With no Knuckles or Shadow because they're assist trophies, Sonic leaves us with Miles, Prower, or Tails. As much as I would love to put Eggman in as another villain rep, we just gotta get the Luigi to Sonic's Mario in here. Pikmin has already taken all the good protagonists, leaving us with Pikmin 4's Rookie Rescue Ranger. Good luck with that moveset. R.O.B doesn't have much to choose from, so you've got 2 real options. The first one being a real nobody in Professor Hector who shows up in like the only thing R.O.B does. But I think it's a lot more interesting if we take Ancient Minister from Smash Bros. Brawl, who is technically a Brawl character, but is R.O.B and could pull from maybe the bomb or maybe the different types of R.O.Bs they had in Subspace Emissary. I think it's got a lot more potential than just some random guy. And 2 spots for Animal Crossing to take, and 2 very easy choices. Everyone's favorite Mafia Don, Tom Nook, here to take all the bells. And my favorite song slinging dog, KK Slider, who could have a lot of sound based attacks or just swing the guitar. Next up is Mega Man, and since the Wily capsule has Wily in it, I'm not going to count him as a valid option, which leaves us with Mega Man's father and major ally, Dr. Light. Next up, Wii Fit. I'm not going to do the balance board. That doesn't seem humanoid enough for Smash's standards, and it feels like it'd be more at home with Rivals of Ether or something like that. Ring Fit Trainee from Ring Fit Adventure, which seems like the next logical choice after Wii Fit Trainer. Now, Punch Out has a lot of good options, so I just had to bite the bullet and take one, and I went with the infamous Glass Joe, who appeared in the first Punch Out and a bunch of games since, and he is always the first boxer that you beat. I think he just would be a fun addition. Now, while the Smash website only lists Miis as one representative, on the character select screen you get three choices: Brawler, Sword Fighter, and Gunner. So I'm going to go for three more reps. And I'm going to try and take actual Miis instead of just generic categories. I'm going to go ahead and start us off with the antagonist of Miitopia, the Dark Lord, who could pull his face from your system like he does in the Miitopia games. You can't talk about iconic Miis without talking about Matt, the Wii Sports boxing menace. He's also in Wii Sports Resort and a few other things, but he is just a unit to fight, and a staple for a lot of people's childhoods. It was pretty hard to find another unique Mii that is a specific character, so I went with Princess 72, who is on the Wii Operations Manual and has been used a lot for Nintendo Music, the Mii Channel, those Brain Academy games, and stuff like that. Pac-Man is tricky since the main four ghosts are assist trophies, so you can't use any of them and make them alternate skins. So I went ahead and grabbed Orson, who is the antagonist for Pac-Man World and in later games is an ally, and still is similar enough to the ghost that it can capture that Pac-Man feeling, without being one of the ones in the assist trophy. Now, Street Fighter does have an Echo Fighter, so I was looking not only for Street Fighter characters with some history that have been around a while, but also one that could kind of be incorporated into another one's moveset for an Echo. But ultimately, I did have to go with Chun-Li, who I believe is the first female fighting game character ever, if not one of the first. My next pick was Juri, who I think you could also take a few moves from characters like Zero Suit Samus or the other Street Fighter characters and incorporate it in to make her stand out a little bit. She's got some good potential. Final Fantasy just has so many good options, and it already has a villain rep. So I'm going to go ahead and ignore the 7 part of this and assume I can use the whole franchise. And unfortunately, my number 1 pick would be Auron from Final Fantasy X, but I don't think I can fit him on the list when there are better options. Where I would like to put Auron, I have to put Vivi, who has a more unique moveset potential being a mage, and I think is probably one of the best written side characters in the entire franchise's history, and most other games besides. This might be an unpopular pick, but I'm going to go with Jack, the protagonist of Strangers of Paradise, the Final Fantasy Origin game. He's got the real-time combat era covered, and I think he's really interesting and well written. Now, I've never even looked at a Bayonetta game, so this could be a horrible or a great opinion. You all let me know. But Baldur looks super cool. The first game's antagonist, Bayonetta's father, and look at that design. It just looks fun to use. Alright, everyone stop, pause the video, go play all of Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. You'll have the best time of your life. It's one of my top 3 games. And then come back. We have the Xenoblade 1 protagonist, we've got Xenoblade 2's protagonist in the background for Pyra and Mithra, and so between the 2 protagonists for 3, I think Mio just has the more unique weapon, rather than putting another sword fighter in the game. Some people would say there are better reps you could put in for Xenoblade, and all of those people are wrong. Alvis deserves to be in Smash because he's one of my favorites, and I don't care what anyone else says. It's my list, he's going in. Duck Hunt is pretty much impossible. They've already integrated every major aspect of Duck Hunt into the one character. The blaster's part of the attacks, the dog, and the duck are all part of the character. So I did what I could. Duck Hunt has 2 different ducks in the base game, 2 different color palettes at least. One of them is featured with the character we have now, so I went with the other duck color. Unless you want to take a tree, that's about all you can do. Now, I really don't want another character that takes Inkling's moveset, its gimmick. I want to get something a little more unique, and it's been a minute since I put another antagonist on the list, so welcome heavyweight champion Mr. Grizz to Smash. Now, a long series of games with Castlevania having another Echo Fighter to deal with, which means we've got the number one recurring final antagonist for Castlevania, Dracula himself, who is in the game as a boss already, but could also work in a similar way to Mark's. And his Echo Fighter is going to be his son, Alucard, who is also a series staple, and I'm a little bit biased because of the awesome Netflix TV series. Welcome to another series of games I haven't even touched, Persona. Well, tell me if this is a good pick. That's what I've heard requested the most. Yu Narukami, the protagonist of Persona 4. Another protagonist from another popular game makes sense to me. Moving on to Dragon Quest, they've represented a lot of the different heroes, so I want to represent the monster slash dragon side of Dragon Quest. Which means we've got the antagonist Lord Draco, big old dragon, and if they can make Ridley work, they can make this big guy work. Banjo and Kazooie has a couple of good characters you could put in there, but I had to pick one, so I went with recurring ally Mumbo Jumbo, not to be confused with the Minecraft YouTuber. Look at that little guy. We are down to our final 5 franchises, hitting another one I've never touched in Fatal Fury. Now, as far as I can tell, Hotaru is a super popular character from the most recent game, and therefore deserves a spot, especially since her moveset potential looks pretty nice for Smash. This franchise is ARMS, and Springman's the mascot. Alright, moving on. Minecraft covered a lot of the good ones already, and other ones I don't think fit quite as well, like Ghast or Ender Dragon would be pretty hard, so I went with Warden, who is a boss monster type thing, so kind of an antagonist, and would just play differently, represent the new area, and I don't have to deal with anyone else putting blocks on the ground while I'm trying to play Smash. Second to last, we've got Tekken, a franchise I also haven't touched. So I went with Yoshimitsu, I think that's how you say that, who can be a Tekken rep and also a Soul Calibur rep, since that's not a franchise I can actually pick for this video, but it's a little bit of crossover. There are so many Kingdom Hearts characters I want to put in. This is one of the series I grew up on. And even not counting the Final Fantasy characters, which would go under that one, or, the Disney ones, which we'll never get. There's Riku and Kairi. I especially love Riku. There's Shion. Roxas is probably a little too similar, but he would be fun. Axel. Pretty much anyone in the organization would be a good choice. There's Ansem, Seeker of Darkness. Ericus would be awesome. I'm not a big fan of Aqua and them, gonna be honest, but she would also be interesting to see in Smash. But I had to pick one. I'm gonna stay on my villain set. My pick is leader of Organization 13, final antagonist of my favorite game in the series. He's got the design, he's got the moves, he has a super fun boss battle and a deep, buttery voice. I couldn't pick anyone else other than Xemnas to round out the list. Well, that's going to do it for this video. Thanks for watching. Thanks for sticking it through to the end. Let me know which ones you agree with, which takes you think are absolutely horrible and never should have made it in here. And I'll see you guys in the next one.